The dim glow of the chandelier cast fractured light through the crystal tumbler in Nathan Carter's hand, illuminating the rich amber of the whiskey he swirled absently. He watched the liquid move, as if searching for answers in its depths, while across the polished mahogany dining table, his wife, Evelyn, barely spared him a glance. Without lifting her eyes from her phone, she slid a small, unremarkable envelope toward him. "Happy birthday," she murmured, her tone devoid of warmth. Nathan flipped it open, his fingers moving with measured precision. Inside lay a $10 discount coupon. For a long moment, he simply stared, the weight of the insult settling over him like a cold hand around his throat. 10 years of marriage. A decade of devotion. And this was his reward. A slow breath escaped through his nose as he took a deliberate sip of whiskey, masking the slow burn in his chest with the burn of the alcohol. His fingers, however, betrayed him, tightening ever so slightly around the glass. Beyond Evelyn, her reflection shimmered in the floor-to-ceiling window. But something was wrong. In the reflection, her lips curled at the corners, a smirk. Except, she wasn't smirking in real life. Nathan knew that look too well. It was the smile she reserved for when she thought she was winning. Outside, the city pulsed, a neon heartbeat against the dark sky. He turned his gaze to the skyline, his mind moving beyond the walls of his own home, beyond the woman who no longer saw him. He had been blind for too long. The following morning, Nathan sat in his sleek, glass-walled office high above a city that never slept. As CFO of Westbridge Holdings, he held power, considerable power. But not the kind that made men bow. That power belonged to Thomas Reed, the CEO. His so-called best friend. His wife's lover. Nathan had known for months. The missed calls. The cold detachment. The lingering scent of a perfume that wasn't hers. But last night, that coupon had been the final insult. The last straw. A knock at the door. His assistant, Julia, stepped inside, a thick file in her hands. She set it down on his desk with quiet finality. "Everything you asked for." Nathan opened it. Page after page of financial reports, contracts, stock trends, Reed's entire empire dissected in crisp black ink. A blueprint to his downfall. Julia hesitated. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan lifted his gaze, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he closed the file. "He took everything from me." His voice was calm. Steady. "Now I take everything from him." That evening, Evelyn stood in front of the mirror, slipping into an emerald green gown. One Nathan had bought for her, once upon a time. "I'll be late," she said, spritzing perfume at her neck. The same scent she always wore on nights she planned to see him. Nathan smiled faintly. "Of course. Have fun." She didn't notice the way his fingers drummed rhythmically against his glass. She didn't notice the way his eyes lingered. She never noticed anymore. An hour later, she stepped into the grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive venue, her arm casually entwined with Reed's. They laughed together, surrounded by the elite, sipping champagne under the glow of golden chandeliers. The music swelled, the room a dazzling display of wealth and power. And at the center of it all stood Thomas Reed, confident, untouchable, until the room fell silent. A murmur rippled through the crowd as security entered, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Reed's brow furrowed as he leaned in to listen, his expression shifting from confusion to something colder. Then, as if sensing something, his head snapped toward the entrance. Nathan Carter strolled in. Unhurried. Composed. Calculated. Reed's expression darkened. "What the hell are you doing here?" Nathan reached into his pocket and withdrew a neatly folded document. He unfolded it slowly, deliberately, and extended it to Reed. "I believe this belongs to you." Reed's eyes scanned the paper. The color drained from his face. His jaw tightened. His hands trembled. Evelyn, still draped over his arm, frowned. "What is this?" Nathan took a step closer, his voice laced with quiet amusement. "It's the acquisition papers." He let the words settle, let them sink in. Then, with the ghost of a smile, he added, "As of this evening, I own everything. I own Westbridge Holdings. Your company. Your empire." Nathan let the words settle, let them seep into the silence before adding, almost as an afterthought, "And you, Thomas." A pause. A slow, deliberate breath. "You're fired." The room held its breath. Reed's face contorted, disbelief flickering into something uglier. "This is a joke." Nathan tilted his head slightly, his voice silk smooth. "Check with legal." A flicker of amusement touched his lips. "It's done." Evelyn inhaled sharply, confusion flashing across her face. "Nathan, what?" His gaze found hers, something dark and knowing lurking in the depths of his eyes. "You should have given me more than $10, Evelyn." She stiffened. For the first time in years, her breath caught. Security stepped forward, waiting for the command. Reed's hands curled into fists as he turned to Evelyn, seeking reassurance, but she was already slipping away, her fingers sliding from his arm. The mask she always wore, the one of effortless control, of cold, calculating composure, cracked just enough for Nathan to see the panic beneath. For a moment, he simply watched. Savored it. Then, without another word, he turned. He walked away as Reed was escorted out, but just before reaching the exit, he paused. Nathan didn't look back, but his voice carried effortlessly through the stunned silence. "Oh, and Evelyn." He let the moment stretch, let her feel the weight of it. "Pack your things." The night skyline stretched infinitely before him as he stepped onto the balcony. The cold air bit at his skin, but he welcomed it. The city hummed below, a living, breathing entity, indifferent to victory or loss. He exhaled slowly, watching his breath disappear into the night. Then, from his pocket, he pulled a crumpled slip of paper. The coupon. He unfolded it one last time, running his thumb over the worthless insult, the final, careless token of a decade wasted. Then, with a flick of his lighter, he set it aflame. The fire curled hungrily along the edges, devouring the past, burning through the betrayal, the years of blindness, the weight of her deception. The embers scattered into the night, carried away by the wind. And for the first time in a long, long time, Nathan Carter smiled. The rooftop terrace was quiet, the city stretching endlessly in all directions. This world, this empire, was his now, fully and completely. No shadows. No pretenses. Just power, cold and absolute. He stood there, absorbing the silence, the rare kind of peace that came with knowing he had one. Behind him, the soft click of heels. He didn't turn. "You planned this." Evelyn's voice was quieter than he expected. "For how long?" Nathan let the question settle between them before answering. "Long enough." She stepped closer, her reflection appearing in the glass beside his own. For the first time, she wasn't the poised, untouchable woman she had always pretended to be. She was uncertain. Exposed. "What happens now?" she asked. He finally turned to face her, his gaze steady, unreadable. "That's up to you." She searched his expression, looking for something, remorse, hesitation, a sliver of the man who once loved her. She found nothing. "Everything you had was borrowed," he said evenly. "My name. My money. My loyalty." His gaze sharpened, cutting through the space between them. "And now, you have nothing." Her lips parted, but no words came. Nathan reached into his pocket, retrieving a sleek black card. He held it between his fingers for a beat before sliding it into her trembling hand. "There's a hotel room booked under your name. One night." She stared at him, the reality sinking in. "After that," he said, stepping past her, his voice the last thing she heard before the cold swallowed her whole. "Find your own way."